Hello viewers and welcome back to a brand new feature for 2024. This is Jordan Talks Unscripted about movies that he's just been to the cinema to see. Now if you can't already imagine, this means that a lot of the thoughts might be a bit jumbled. It might take me a few episodes of doing this to get into the rhythm of how I convey my thoughts. But as far as, taking the hit, we could do it with worse films than Night Swim. So yes, Night Swim is the subject of today's video. This is episode 1. And people, it's not very good. I was trying to figure out better ways that I could come across and say it in a more neutral term, but I can't. I just gotta be honest, I wasn't loving it. Now I will admit, I went into it knowing it probably wasn't going to be great. I'd seen a lot of bad things, a lot of things that prepared me for the fact that I was walking into a stinker, but I didn't expect it to be, as awful as people were conveying it to be. And in its defense, I don't think it is. If I could summarize this movie in any wording of my choice, I would say that this thing is a bunch of mixed potential. I think there's a lot of things here that could honestly work if given a better script, but there's a lot of things here that just really don't, with one of those being the script. I want to start off with a positive and say that it's a pretty commendable effort that they were able to make an entire 90-minute movie on a swimming pool as a horror subject, and this becomes point 1 of my criticisms, because this has the potential to work. I think given a good script, the swimming pool as a horror concept and a place for the otherness to harvest itself honestly could be pretty promising. However, I don't think Night Swim nearly goes as far as it should in terms of, realising that potential that it has. I think there's a lot of uncovered ground here. I think performances are great. I think the performances are honestly the strongest part of this movie. I think Wyatt Russell is great. I think Kerry Condon is great. I don't know how to pronounce the actress who plays Izzy's name, so I'm going to just put it on screen here. We also have Gavin Warren. Honestly, the 4 of them together as a family unit are pretty great. I think they do a good job with a very lackluster script. This thing was produced by Blumhouse and Atomic Monster. I can't really speak for Atomic Monster because I can't name a lot of their movies off the top of my head. However, I know that Blumhouse is very hit or miss with their horror, and this very much feels like the case here. Their January horror effort last year in Megan was actually pretty successful, did really well. I ended up really enjoying it. I can't say the same for this one. I think this very much feels like a January horror movie. It feels like something that they had next to no faith in, so they pushed it out in a month where there isn't a whole lot going on. And I think all of that ultimately builds up to the disappointment factor that this movie has, because again, if given a bit of treatment, I think the script has potential to actually be a somewhat memorable movie. I don't think you can make it great. I don't think this is anything that could ever be this fantastic piece of horror cinema that goes on to reshape the landscape, but a lot of horror films don't do that. You don't get that with a lot of horror films nowadays. I just think the movie is nothing we haven't seen before. I think the biggest issue is that past the main concept, which has promise, there's not really a whole lot here that keeps you invested in making you want to watch it. I think the design of the creature in the pool is pretty boring. We don't see it much, but the main one that we do see, it feels as though we've seen that same design done 1,000 times before in horror movies nowadays. I, for one, am getting bored of this same sort of concept of monster. It always seems to end in some sort of possession, and it's not fun for me anymore. I'm not seeing any film go out and breathe life into this concept that makes me think, you know what, I want to see this again. It's a trope in my opinion that uses a lot of work to, become serviceable again, and in Night Swim, I think that's just me hit the brick wall. That was in the distance, always coming, but it's here now. I don't want any more of it, please stop. But a couple of things that I do like about it though, I think the sound design is okay in places. I think it's one of the stronger aspects of the movie. I do think the third act, for as bad as the ending is in my eyes and as lackluster as it feels, has some great tension to it. Again, I think this is one of the points where they actually started. They had a couple of cool concepts for moments like this, and they sort of wrote backwards from there. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, I just don't think it had the structural capability to support a whole plot outside of maybe a 20-minute short film. I like a lot of the third act. The third act has some of the more memorable aspects of the movie. I think the possessed Wyatt Russell character actually brought a lot of tension to the movie. There was a couple of scenes with him that were actually a little unnerving to watch. I won't say they were scary because there wasn't once where I wasn't laughing at the end of a scene, but I'm looking for positives here, people. A lot of the horror framed around this aspect of Wyatt's character is actually pretty well done. I do have to give the credit to that. Blumhouse, for all the hit and misses that they do tend to have, even the misses tend to have a couple of moments that make you realise that, this is the reason why these guys are still doing horror. There are aspects where they know how to do things. One of the issues that I have with the family dynamic isn't so much with the performances, rather with the writing, in that it just doesn't feel that authentic. Again, I don't think the issues are the performance. I think what we're dealing with here is a very weak script with dialogue that feels more stilted than anything else. I think it leaves a lot to be desired, and it's disappointing because, like I've said countless times, I think this is a concept that does have potential, and I would like to see someone with a genuine idea come to this sort of swimming pool horror design and do something with it, do something interesting with it, because I feel like there's an idea here, I can't fully visualize it. And I honestly think that's the same as what the filmmakers and everyone involved had here. I think they had the idea, they just didn't know how to fully execute it. I understand I'm jumping through a lot of hoops, but the bottom line is, overall, I didn't like this movie. I feel like we started 2024 off with a pretty poor effort. I don't think this is ever anything that I want to go back and rewatch. It doesn't have that rewatchability for me. It's not a promising sign when a lot of the scenes had me laughing more than anything else, and that's awful for a horror movie if you ask me. You can laugh at a nervousness sometimes to release from a jump scare, but that wasn't what I was doing. I was laughing at the absurdity of some of the moments. I don't think it works. Overall, if I had to try and rank this thing, right now I have it sitting at a 5 out of 10. It could honestly drop lower. I think that's me being generous, but I know for a fact it's getting nothing higher. It's just disappointing. I wanted to like this thing, I wanted to give it a chance given how bad the reviews were, and while I don't think everyone talking about it and calling it one of the worst or dull things we've ever seen is correct, I think there's elements here that work. I simultaneously don't think it's anything that engaging, I don't think it's all that interesting. But that being said, I would also suggest that you do watch this to make your own opinion, because that is what I wanted to do. I wasn't willing to sit here and just accept that it's bad based off of other people's opinions, and I wouldn't want anyone who hasn't seen the film to do the same based off of how I'm interpreting it. If you've seen Night Swim, feel free to get down in the comments and let me know what you thought of it. I'd love to see your feedback. Maybe you enjoyed the movie, or you saw something about it that I didn't, or maybe you thought it was a lot worse than I did. I'd like to know all the feedback, so again, get in the comments and let me know. Leave a like if you've enjoyed hearing me talk about this movie. If you have any feedback for how I can improve this formula in the future for other films, please let me know, as it's a new concept and we're still working out some issues. But be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future film reviews and video essays. We have more coming just around the corner. But until then, I've been Media13. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time.